Deputy Speaker, this weekend Tasmanians will head to the polls to decide the next state parliament. And as is the case with all elections, the community is being bombarded with promises from the parties about how they will make our lives better. But this is what I'm hearing from my community about what they expect from the next Tasmanian government. For a start, they expect a health system that works and not one constantly on the brink of collapse. For instance, our emergency department waiting times are above the national average, with only 52% of patients seen on time, compared with 65% nationally. Moreover, 44% of Category 1 elective surgery patients weren't admitted within the clinically recommended timeframe, and all that is simply outrageous. Clearly, more funding is needed, though to be clear, it isn't the only answer. For example, despite revenue and staff numbers increasing for the ambulance service over recent years, response times are down. In fact, Tasmanians are now waiting longer than at any other time in the last decade, in a clear sign that what's actually needed is substantial structural reform. Deputy Speaker, Tasmanians also expect a safe and affordable place to live. But this has been out of reach for many, and it's getting worse. Indeed, we've seen a 45% increase in homelessness in Tasmania since the last census. Plus, there's a record 4,700 people languishing on the housing waiting list, and more than half of mortgage holders in Clark are at risk of mortgage stress. Moreover, Hobart is the second least affordable capital city for renters, with rents ballooning by 60% since 2016. Clearly, these figures are appalling, which is why the next government must significantly increase investment in social housing and crisis accommodation, streamline development approvals and strengthen renters' rights. It must also pay far more attention to education, because, shamefully, Tasmania ranks well behind the mainland states when it comes to education outcomes. For example, the latest report on government services shows that a mere 53% of Tasmanians leave school with a Year 12 or equivalent qualification, compared to 76% nationally. No wonder around half of all Tasmanian adults are functionally illiterate. And speaking of young people, Deputy Speaker, the next government must implement all the recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry into the Tasmanian Government's response to child sexual abuse, including closing Ashley Youth Detention Centre urgently. As many in the community would recall, the Commission's findings detailed horrific evidence of physical and sexual abuse, inhumane isolation practices and strip and cavity searches of children. Yet the Liberals have pushed back their commitment to close the centre from 2024 to 2026. And Labor has also confirmed that it will not close the centre immediately. And all of that is unconscionable, especially considering the Commission has flagged that there remains a live and current risk of sexual abuse to children in Ashley. And, Speaker, I also implore the next state government to swiftly implement the cashless gaming card, not least because Tasmanians lost almost $190 million on poker machines in the 2022-23 financial year, a 10.5% increase over a 4-year period. But while the Liberals supported the Tasmanian Liquor and Gaming Commission's recommendation to implement a statewide player card gaming system with pre-commitment and cashless gaming in 2022, we've seen no practical action. And shamefully, although unsurprisingly, we've heard nothing from Labor. Indeed, if Liberal and Labor are serious about addressing gambling harm, they must commit to implementing mandatory card play immediately. And last but certainly not least, Speaker, the next government needs to get serious about protecting our environment. Yet all we've heard so far is a cynical attempt to reignite the forest wars, despite more than 680 Tasmanian plant and animal species being listed as threatened, including the swift parrot and the Maugean skate. Surely, Speaker, the next Tasmanian government needs to start taking its responsibility as custodian of our state seriously, including by growing a backbone and standing up to the forestry and salmon industries, whose business is trashing Tasmania's clean green reputation and undermining what Tasmanians and tourists value most about our state. Speaker, if the last 10 years are anything to go by, the next government needs to actually start governing for a change, because the community is sick and tired of politicians promising one thing and doing another. Indeed, until the political parties start listening to the community, Their promises in Tasmania are nothing but empty words. Thank